Tashi Dele Kusuzambala. I wish to thank the Center for Bhutan Studies for hosting this wonderful event, and my greetings to all the venerables before me. And I wish to also thank my root guru, without whom I would not be a Tibetan physician today and would not be speaking on this subject, which I feel very passionate about as Vajrayana comes to the West. As a Tibetan doctor working in America, I sometimes find myself more as a translator than a doctor, because I'm encountering not only medical issues, which are quite serious, but I'm encountering a lot of people who are translating themselves, trying to understand Buddhism as a way of life, as a practice. So the body is a vehicle for enlightenment. It is really hard to become enlightened if you are distracted by illness. And this is exactly why Sowa Rigpa matters so much in this modern day and age, especially for practitioners, to understand that the body is a mandala. You can be in the 72,000 camp. I kind of happen to be in the 84,000 camp. It really depends on the sutra you're working with. But we have all of the elements, as so many people have explained over the last few days. And we're sort of having this merging of modern understanding of the gut-brain biome. We're understanding that there's channels. We know that perhaps like Parkinson's may actually go up the whole nerve system into the brain. So there's constant sort of sharing of ancient knowledge and modern medicine that is happening all the time. So we always begin and in the middle stay with understanding that marigpa, or ignorance, is the root cause of all of our illness on the body, mind, and spirit level. So that is to also say that ignorance is the root cause of all disease. So we have our grasping, our desire, our attachments, and we have our ignorance. And we have a false understanding often in the West that if we just become Buddhists, we'll be these very nice people and we're not going to have any problems, right? But then we cherish our root poison with such devotion while we're trying to be such good Buddhists. But what we really need to do is have a place to land. We have to learn what is our own basic nature, what is the main root poison that drives us. So we know, we've all heard, that Dharma is the great medicine, but we also know that medicine is the great Dharma. So we have very basic preliminary practices. And I come from a country where people just think preliminary means get it out of the way as fast as we can so we can move on to the bells and the whistles and the dorjes and the thigh bone trumpets and everything that they want to look like a really good practitioner. But there is a reason that we are performing these preliminary practices to work on those channels, on the inner purification level. So we're setting the stage. We have 84,000 different methods to tame the mind. That means we have 84,000 different ways to be neurotic. Here's the great news. We have 84,000 different ways to wake up. So it's important to find the right match for a teacher who helps to wake you up and to set the stage for you to understand your inner cherishing of your own root poisons. So Nundro is a very condensed way to do that. So this is not something that should be skipped really quickly or gotten through so we can get to the Vajrayana. So it really integrates all the aspects of the channels of our body, and it helps set the stage. So I'm going to tell you a story about my root guru, Venerable Khenchen Trongru Rinpoche. He and I were having a conversation when I was a young doctor. I'd probably only been practicing about 6 years. And I said to him, Rinpoche, I feel kind of uneasy because there's all these people who come to me who've been practicing Buddhism for 20 years, 30 years, and they're seeking my advice. And he said, what is the main problem with them? And I said, lung, which means wind. Their minds were not stable. And he said, what is the antidote? And I said, Shine? And he said, that is correct. And I have never forgotten that. And so it is one of my favorite practices to prescribe to people. So when we're looking at shamatha, shamatha is actually a complete Dzogchen practice in and of itself. And if you really go through this teaching, you can see that simply by watching the tanka, you can look at the development of purification of the gross level of the body and the subtle level of the body. So the elephant is representing the gross, the monkey is the mind. We have this monk who's chasing after his own self. He has not learned to master those inner 5 elements, which are always rooted in the 3 root poisons. Then we have this little aspect where we start to catch ourselves for a nanosecond, and we develop a little rabbit that appears. And that little rabbit is the very subtle aspects of the body. If you look at the tanka carefully, and we don't have time to go into the teachings, but I highly suggest you all study it, eventually the rabbit disappears as we start to purify and clarify the inner channels. That subtle aspect integrates with the gross aspect, and you see the clearance in that demonstrated very clearly in this tanka. And then, of course, you can actually attain Jalu, or the rainbow body, as a complete Mahamudra or Dzogchen practice, simply by doing Shine. And several of our really profound masters, and I don't know much about Buddhism at all, I am not a very good practitioner, I'm just a doctor. They were giving you very good advice when they were giving you instructions about how to do this practice. So let's talk about prostrations. It does antidote our pride. It helps us to take refuge in the 3 jewels. And it's something that we all need to work at. And it's a base practice that I also prescribe often for people who need a little exercise. But if we look at the root tantras of Tibetan medicine, it says, so then, as follows, the 3 forces of the 3 faults, which are the primary energies of Lung, Tipa, and Pagan, the 7 bodily sustainers, and the 3 wastes of sweat, feces, and urine, while in equilibrium or balance, result in either health or disease, respectively. That is to say, we have to understand where our own basic nature is. If we understand our own root poisons, we see how that interacts with our own physical form. So when performing prostrations, if you are a speedy little mind, you should not perform them quickly. You should perform them slowly. If you are a little bit more of the phlegmatic nature, a little bit more earth and water, and a little bit more nyupto or lazy, then you should perform them quicker. And then the Tipa person who wants to do everything very correctly should probably find the middle path. Circumambulation is always an option if you have really bad knees, for example. We also want to cultivate our bodhicitta, because this also helps clean our channels, because it is antidoting the jealousy that is inherent from our derived 3 root poisons. We do mandala offering to antidote our attachment or our lung, our grasping, this idea that we are somehow more precious than everyone else in our world. So it's a direct method also to gather the 2 accumulations of merit and pristine awareness. Again, due to shortness of time, I cannot go into it too much. And then we do our guru yoga practice, and we do this to antidote delusion. because your guru is pristine and pure. When you connect directly with your guru, you are actually awakened in that same way, which is why it's so important to find someone who wakes you up. It's someone who antidotes your own root poisons. And it took me years to realize, why am I so soft and nice whenever I'm around my root guru? I thought it was him doing that to me, but he was just reminding me of how I could actually be if I let my own poisons move out of the way. So what is all this lung that everyone wants to talk about? So the mind rides the wind. We have the 5 lungs. We've learned a little bit about them in meditation practice when we've heard about the position of the 7 positions that we hold, which hold the lungs in the correct manner. So they run all the way through the whole body. We have the Soksen lung, which of course is the life-sustaining channel. It holds our life. It's literally holding the wind apart. It has a lot of different functions, but one of the primary ones is within our own mind. So, for example, in the West, when people are sort of a little bit unstable, maybe homeless because they have become so traumatized in some way, it is this lung which has been disturbed, which needs to be treated. We have the upward rising wind, or the Gengir lung, which is for our speech. So as we purify our speech through mantra perhaps, or other practices, this wind is also purified. So this also gains a lot of sharpness in our minds and mental clarity, and it reigns in the upper portion of the body. The all-pervasive wind, of course, moves all of our limbs and all of the opening and closing of our orifices. And so manifestations in this state you see in a lot of neurological disorders. So panic attacks, anxiety, heart palpitations, because it all begins in the location of the heart. The fire accompanying wind, or the Menyum lung, traditionally, according to texts, it only states stomach, but from my years of experience, I would say that it actually runs kind of through the whole canal itself, and mostly primarily in the duodenum, or the first 12 inches of the small intestine. And this regulates all of our digestive system. And so what are we consuming? What are we actually taking into our bodies? How is that affecting this particular wind? And how does this wind interact with our other winds? So all of the, somebody asked me at the hospital when I toured it yesterday, what's one disease you would treat if you treated nothing else? And I said mashua, which means indigestion. Because if this wind is not balanced, then all of the other 4 will likely have problems as well. We have the downwards voiding wind, which is in the secret place. And this is responsible for a lot of our elimination functions. So malfunction on this level can create lower body disharmonies, disturbances, reproductive dysfunctions. So what are the antidotes? Breath as object of support, using the Vairocana posture, the 7-pointed posture, which actually helps all 5 of those winds. Breathing with mantra. So again, know your root poison, know your mind. You don't necessarily want to know if you want to do Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, and feel the difference between that and Om Mani Padme Hum. That is medicine. That is medicine that I give my patients. We have the 9 purification breathing practices, which we can prescribe safely. Meeting of the white and the black, understanding a point on the body where we can apply self-massage and treatment. Working with the bar lung once we see that your mind is a little bit more stable. I always tell my patients, think of the moon disk. Make your mind like the moon disk. And then you can begin to do some preliminary vase breathing. And only then and with help with a guru, should you be dipping your toes into Vajrayana. Otherwise, once you get on the roller coaster, as a friend of mine says, you don't know how fast it's going to go. So in our modern world, we have a lot of inflammation, cognitive focus, depression. We know that there's the gut-brain connection. All of these can be worked through the wind. These are channels of the wind through the central and peripheral nervous system. And our point is to unblock the channels. So I would highly encourage you to do lots and lots of Shinee. Thank you. Tujushe.